What up? What up? What up? Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the scorecard, the boxing scorecard, where I ask you to bring your scorecard and an explanation, not just your opinion. All right. So, last night, the featured bout of the evening was for the World Boxing Organization NABO Super Middleweight title. The challenger was Roamer Alexis Angulo from Colombia, sporting a record of 27-2 with 23 knockouts. He's one of those guys that kind of fell under the radar. Obviously, you can tell 23 knockouts out of 27 fights. So obviously he has power in his punches, but fell under the radar because one of those guys that when it comes to the business part of it, he's what you'd be considered a high risk but low reward fight. So he wouldn't get paid a lot because not a lot of people know him, and it's a high risk because he's a power puncher with some good skills. He only had 2 losses on his career, and his only 2 losses was to David Benavidez, who I've been saying for a while is the person that I believe can beat Canelo um, at 168, and his other loss was to Gilberto Ramirez, who's one of the top guys at light heavyweight right now. So those were his only 2 losses. So, Roamer Alexis Angulo under the radar. Might not think he's good, but a very, very good boxer. And then we had the champion coming in, Edgar, the chosen one, Berlanga. Yeah, we're going to pause on this one here. The chosen one, Bralanga, 25 years old out of New York. Coming into this fight, he was 19-0 with 16 knockouts. Yeah. 19-0 with 16 knockouts. Now, you can see the tail of the tape there, both at the same height. Angulo with a little bit of a longer reach. And then the only question going in, I said Angulo slipped under the radar. He's been avoided for his whole career. But he's 38 years old. That's the only kind of question mark I had going into this fight. In real life, 38 years old is not old, but in athlete's age, that's it's a lot of mileage on on your body at especially in boxing. So wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. Next slide, please. So just to give a little bit of background on Mr. Berlanga. See, he's 16-0, which is common. You see a lot of guys, good guys that come out of the amateurs, not just amateurs, but there's a lot of guys that go 16-0. But the path to his 16-0 was a lot different. Um, his path to 19-0 was a lot different. 16 out of his 19 fights were first round knockouts, like first round KOs. Now, for those that don't know, the way you start out when you're in your professional career, it starts out 4 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds, 10, and then 12. Your first couple of fights are 4 rounds, probably your first 4 or 5 fights. So his first 5 fights were 4 rounders. Even if one of those is a first round knockout, it's okay for you to go 2 or 3 rounds just to get your feet wet at the professional ranks. When you get to your 6th fight, that's when you start to do 6 rounds, right? An extra 2 rounds. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it does make a difference. Those 2 rounds does make a difference with slightly better competition. So again, instead of going 2-3 rounds, now you're going maybe 3 or 4 rounds out of those 6. You're still expected to win, but you're still getting some experience. Sorry with the light's going all crazy here. You're still getting that experience, those professional experience doing those rounds. Then when you get to your 10th fight, that's when you're starting to go 8 rounds with your opponents. Again, slightly better competition, and testing yourself out from there. So, but again, Berlanga, the first time that he went over, past the first round was in a 17th fight. So even though he's in his, teenage numbers when it comes to fighting experience, like in real, like professional experience, he's kind of still a novice if you think about it. Like if his first 4 fights as a professional, remember I just explained this before, if his first 4 fights are 4 rounds, if he went the distance in those four fights, he would have as many rounds as he did in his 16 fights. Oh, sorry, 4 fights. 4 times 4, 16, right? Yeah. So if he went the distance in his first 4 fights, that would have been as many rounds as he's done in his 16 fights when he had 16 first round knockouts. Right now, in between then, there's all those other fights. So again, even though he's 16-0, that 16-0 is still low experience when it comes to the professional level. Now we can get into the fight with the other slides. Now this fight, similar to last week, this was a shutout for Berlanga. However, these numbers are don't tell exactly how the story went, because I scored every round for Bralanga, but the story didn't show exactly how the numbers went. So we'll get into the next slides, and you can just let it run normal from here. So round one, Bralanga controlled it with boxing, with his good educated jab and footwork. You can tell that when he had his other fights, he was so used to just taking people out. That's all he was looking for, and he wasn't making it a secret. That's what he was trying to do, just to come and finish this fight as soon as possible. That's what people were expecting him to do, and he was making it too obvious. This fight, I appreciated how he used an educated jab, not just randomly throwing it out there, but using an educated jab to find Angulo as opponent, and very good footwork moving around the ring. That was the first round. Even though I marked it as a close round because Angulo was still coming hard forward, I gave it to Bralanga. Second round, Bralanga is not blatantly looking my notes, so I'm reading my notes and going off from there. Second round, Bralanga, he wasn't blatantly looking for the KO. He's actually boxing very good, which was opposite to his other fights, like I said, where he was used to just coming after you and finishing it off real quick. Third round, Bralanga looked very good, very composed, and very smart. Like he was boxing very good. He showed, as an amateur, he's been boxing since he was like 9-10 years old. So he does have a deep amateur experience, not high level international experience, but did have a lot of fights. They kind of developed him into having a pro style early, which doesn't really work at the amateur level. But like I said, 16-0, so it worked for him at the pro so far. Round 4 is where things started to go a little bit shaky for Mr. Berlanga, and it was the perfect timing for this slide to come in here. Berlanga started leaking, not a lot, but he started leaking from his nose. He decided to sit down more this round. He got caught a few times and did not look as comfortable as he did in the first 3 rounds. Again, I still gave it to Berlanga, but Angulo did make it uncomfortable for him. Going into round 4, I marked round 4. Yeah, round 4, close round. Going into round 5, I also marked it as a close round. Bralanga, Angulo was not showing any effect from Berlanga's punches. Bralanga, he was jabbing, but Angulo was not respecting it. This is Angulo right here. He wasn't respecting Berlanga's punches and just simply walking through. But Angulo was not counter punching. So Angulo was coming forward, showing that Berlanga's punches were not having as much an effect on him. But at the same time, Angulo was not taking advantage of that opportunity that Berlanga was kind of giving him. Going into round 6, Berlanga, my notes for round 6 exactly were, Berlanga is lucky that this guy's 38 years old. The way that Berlanga started the fight, I thought he would pick it up from the momentum that he had, but the momentum is kind of going the other way around. Angulo had the momentum, but again was not picking up on that opportunity to do that. Round 7, my notes for round 7, Angulo was target practice for Berlanga, but Berlanga was not really taking advantage of it. Like Berlanga was literally just walking forward. He had his hands up. He was walking forward with his hands up, blocking some punches, taking a few, but slow with his counter punching. So, he couldn't really take advantage of it. Round 8, what we got here. You can play that slide one more time if you can. Round 8, Berlanga was winning, but not exactly looking good. Berlanga was winning, but not exactly looking good versus a 38-year-old that I forgot about. Again, like I said, in real life, 38 years old is not old, but in the sports and athlete terms, it is getting up there. That's why most athletes retire when they're in their mid to late 30s. It's unfortunate Angulo didn't get his big paydays earlier in his career when he was in his prime. Again, his only 2 losses was to Benavidez and to Ramirez, 2 very good fighters. Round 9, Angulo is not fading at all. Berlanga is winning, but kind of expecting a little bit more. Again, even though I say expecting more because we see as many fights that he has, I got to remind myself, and everyone has to remind himself that he doesn't have that as much professional experience as the number of fights that he has shows. Does that make sense? Right? He doesn't have as much professional experience as the number of fights that he has shows. And then the last round, I didn't even mark any notes for last round. That was it from there. So again, it was a I gave Edgar, the chosen one, Berlanga, every round. It looked kind of shaky at times. Looked kind of shaky. If anybody gave any rounds to Angulo, please let me know. And of course, please explain yourself which round it was, because I did have a few close rounds. I had rounds specifically round 1, round 4, and round 5. I marked as close rounds. So, if anybody had any of the rounds close like that, let me know. A few power punch statistics that I looked up, or that they showed during the screen during the fight. Power punches landed through round 6 was 33. It was even at 33 each. Each fighter landed 33 power punches going into round 6. Going into the last round, the percentage for Bralanga was 97. He landed 97 out of 378 power punches thrown for 26%. Angulo landed 72 out of 321 power punches thrown for 22%. So again, Berlanga getting that experience in there. I know a lot of people are going to criticize him for not getting this guy out of there, but again, you got to remind yourself he's still getting up there with his experience. One of the things that he missed out. Okay, that's it for the fight. Keep the slides going though, as I explained. One of the things that he's missing that you can't skip is experience in anything, not just sports, but in life too, but specifically in boxing. Like when you start those first round, even though they were great, it's great for him, great for his career and financially that he had 16 first round knockouts, because you can market, of course, you could promote that this guy's a knockout artist, and people want to see that, but it's to the detriment of the actual fighter, because this is the reason why this experience is needed. When you have those first couple of fights, Berlanga basically never had time to adapt to different styles that you see. Like, for example, in your earlier in your career, you're gonna face guys. Of course, later on, when at championship level, you're facing the best in the world. But even when you're starting out, you're gonna face guys, for example, that have a low skill level but are very fast punchers. Low skill level, but they can get off punches very fast. So you have to adapt to that. You're gonna face a guy or a girl that has a low skill level, but they're strong really strong, right? Low skill level, but if you get hit with one of them, it's gonna be problems. A perfect example of this, Andre Ward, one of my favorite boxers of all time, 2004 gold medalist, 38-0, I believe, as a professional boxer. Hasn't lost a fight since he was 12 years old. One of my favorite fighters of all time. Earlier in his career, when he's in, I think, pretty sure single digits, he fought a fighter named Darnell Boom. And that's a name that most people, even that follow boxing, wouldn't even know. Darnell Boom is one of those guys that just fell under the radar. Definitely not mainstream. He's one of those guys that didn't really care about boxing. He just fought because he wanted to make some money. When he fought Andre Ward, he told his promoter not to tell him who the guy was. He didn't do any research. He never even knew who Andre Ward was. My whole point of bringing him up is he dropped Andre Ward earlier in their career. This is a guy that people barely even heard of. Andre Ward was highly touted, again, Olympic gold medalist. He was highly touted, signed with Roy Jones Jr. when he first came in. He got dropped by this guy, Darnell Boom. He got up and weathered the storm, but he learned from that experience. Again, my whole point is you're going to face random guys like that aren't good, but you still have to face adversity and see if you can get through that. And then you can also face early in your career a guy that has high skill level but no power. Sometimes you'll face like someone that maybe stayed in the at the amateur level for a long time, where you're used to that. It's not really based on power, but more speed and the number of punches that you throw. If you've been in the amateurs for a long time and then you turn pro, some fighters, some boxers aren't able to make that adjustment. So you might face that. So you, as a fighter, you have to adjust to that too. Um, and then also you might face someone, a fighter that falls under the radar, someone like Terrence Crawford, who right now is regarded as one of the number one guys in the whole sport of boxing. A lot of people say he's the number one guy in this whole sport, pound for pound. Um, when he was coming out of the amateur level, nobody was talking about him about being one of the best in the sport. No, like a few people knew about him. He didn't make the Olympic team. He just barely lost in the finals, but he didn't make the Olympic team. Nobody was talking about Terrence Crawford being the next, the number one pound for pound guy in the sport. He just slowly creeped his way through up the ranks, right? So you might face these guys randomly along your way. So that's the whole thing. And then one of the best examples, Emmanuel Augustus, the drunken style they call them. Google him, his highlights when you YouTube his highlights when you get a chance. The drunken style, and that's exactly how he fought like he was drunk. Floyd Mayweather said that was one of his hardest fights of his career. This was earlier in his career too. Just some random guy that with a weird style that nobody was used to because he can't train for a drunken style. Anyways, yeah. So early, these are all different types of styles that you're gonna face earlier in your career, so that when you get to the highest level, you've seen it all. Orthodox, southpaw, all of that. But Berlanga kind of put himself on that fast track up to the top, up to that top level with low experience. So what is next for Mr. Berlanga? I believe if I was his team, I would still keep him at these B level fighters to get him that experience. I wouldn't just, even though he has the popularity, that's the kind of thing that I'm worried about. He already has the popularity. He has guys like, Fat Joe and all these big guys walking him to the ring, and he's hanging out with all these celebrities. I really hope he doesn't get lost in that lifestyle and forget, what helped get him there, which was staying focused on his training. So at this point, if I was part of his team, I would keep him against these B-level competition guys to get his experience up there. Again, he's still 19-0 right now. His last three fights have gone the distance. But this was the first time that I was about to say the first 3 rounds. This was the first time I actually seen him look comfortable boxing, but that was only for the first 3 rounds. He looked those first 3 rounds of this fight, he looked very good. He boxed very well. He boxed very good. But then after that, he kind of slowly got away from it. Even, like I said, even in the later rounds when Angulo was giving him the opportunity to take him out, Bralanga wasn't really facing it. But at the same time, that's easy sitting on the outside and saying, why aren't you doing more? I already said before, Angulo has, he would 23 knockouts out of his 27 fights. So obviously there's some power in those punches. So even though Berlanga was blocking a lot of them, he obviously felt his power and maybe wasn't trying to take that extra risk to try to take him out, since he already knew he was winning those rounds. That is it for the scorecard analysis. Thank you very much for tuning in. Leave any comments, even if can't see it live on the replay. Leave any comments. I'll reply as soon as I can. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. It's 9:30 every Sunday morning. The scorecard, the boxing scorecard. Bring your scorecard and an explanation, not just your opinion. I mean, I welcome your opinion too, but an explanation is obviously much better. You can not just talk, but give the reason why you thought the way you thought. All right. So it's Sunday right now. Make sure you pay attention. Come back at 4:00 for the knockout of the week. My boy Mike Orr, and of course Monday through Friday, me and my boy Mike Orr are featuring the latest talent of from around the world, upcoming boxers that are kind of under the radar, interviews too. So stay tuned. Talkin Fight channel. Yeah. Like, share, subscribe. Hit me up on any social media at Cedric Sports. All right. Peace.